A standalone, dedicated version of Monster Hunter for the Nintendo Switch seemed like an inevitability when Monster Hunter World did so well on other platforms. That being said, you never know quite what Capcom are gonna do, and I for one didn't expect them to bring the Resident Evil engine across and for it to look and run this well on the Nintendo Switch. And the question that I really want to answer with this review is, how does the online experience hold up? But also, how is that performance? And does the full game bring the RE engine to its knees? Or indeed, rise to an almost impossible challenge? Let's find out. Story has never been the strong point of the series, but this time around, the village are riled up. There's talk of a possible return of the Rampage, where vast numbers of monsters are attacking the village all at the same time. As you'd expect, no one really knows why it's happening, but it's your job to systematically slaughter animals until you can find out. As far as gameplay and controls go, I was initially quite skeptical of the new wirebug system. I feared that it would require the player to entirely learn a new way of moving and that it would become almost compulsory for some of the latter and more difficult fights, but thankfully that's not the case, and on the contrary, when in skilled hands they can be incredibly useful for a team fight against a tough monster, as the wyvern riding ability can allow a player to stagger even the largest of monsters, send them crashing to the ground, and for all intents and purposes beat them while they're down. Before you've even got into a game, you've really got two options of how to play Monster Hunter Rise. The main town area offers you the chance to purchase new gear, upgrade weapons and items, undertake different quests, as well as individual contracts for certain characters around the town, and the usual array of Monster Hunter goodies like creating new recipes or tweaking your individual builds to find just the right loadout for a particular monster. Similar to Monster Hunter World, but a little more streamlined, is the weapons and upgrade system. If you're familiar with the series, you'll know there are numerous different weapons that you can choose from right off the bat, and each handle totally differently. There's a hardcore within Monster Hunter who will be min-maxing in the background trying to find the weapon combinations and armor mixtures that will allow them to do the maximum damage at all times, while you'll equally find the players who are much more concerned with the way they look when they're fighting. But from the main town area, you can choose to play the game on or offline, and this is handled slightly differently than some of the other games. Joining an online game doesn't stop you from traversing the town freely and undertaking missions on your own, but it does mean you can drop into games with your party members when you choose to. It's a much more sensible system, and going one better, you can actually search by specific missions that you're needing to do and instantly join an available match. And the online experience so far has been completely flawless. It's a series which can feel very overwhelming at times, even to veteran players, but that when you invest the time into it will provide you way more reward. Control of the character is very simple. You move with the left stick, you use the R bumper to sprint, and you can hold the A button down, which allows you to mount the new Palamute. All of these will have been designed by your fair hands, and the character customization is some of the best I've seen. You'll be tweaking the brow height, the eye size, and making sure you've got your regional dialect just right.
Observe my hunting prowess. I yearn for combat.
You'll then do the same for your Palamute and your Palico. Where my real love of Monster Hunter comes from, and where Rise really shines, is in how streamlined it makes acquiring new items and gear. And yes, I guess you could say that Monster Hunter is all about grinding for better armor, but using the word grind for facing the monsters that have been created here by Capcom just doesn't do it justice. They feel like epic battles. Each monster has its own unique traits, specific tells that allow you to decide when you should jump out of the way or dive and hit the ground, and the damage numbers give a good indication of exactly the sweet spot and your most effective attacks. The wire bug offers you a nice way of evading, which is how I used it the most, but I can see the potential for some of the more advanced moves you can pull off, and from what I've seen online so far, there's far more to that system than initially meets the eye. The levels themselves, the stages, are one seamless area. There are tons of different items to collect, which you can grab up quite quickly, and Capcom have clearly thought quite hard about how to make them more interesting to explore to make the most of that wirebug mechanic. The multi-monster rampage is an interesting addition, but for me it was still all about those main hunts. There are a few smart systems at play, things like the quick chat options being regionally translated, so if you're playing with someone from Japan, everyone understands each other. It's a nice little touch and it worked really well. At the end of a fight, when that monster finally comes crashing down, there's the like system, which allows you to give specific likes to different players in your party. And while this might not sound like a very big deal, what it means is if you end up with someone who's using, say, a longsword and they're tripping you all the time, by liking the people who didn't do that or the ones that were very team oriented, you can then make sure that you play with those people more often. And it's also used as a slightly subtle way of telling those people that are doing the tripping that it's not okay. As is abundantly clear, I'm sure, Monster Hunter Rise is most certainly my jam. But it's not perfect in every area. The mapping system within a town isn't quite as clear as I would have liked it to have been. I would have liked an overlaid map with icons to show me the different areas. There is a screen you can go to quick jump to specific parts of town, but having both wouldn't have hurt. And as for the controls, they're generally quite good. The wire bug system can feel a little fiddly earlier on, and then there's the gyroscopic controls. They're a game changer as far as using ranged weapons go in Monster Hunter, but there is a caveat. They are some of the driftiest gyro controls I've ever experienced in any game that uses this functionality. And as such, I'd suggest using it only as an aiming down sights option. You can have it available at all times, but you'll find yourself twisting your wrists back to try and keep the thing flat. It can be leveled out with the press of an L bumper, but having to constantly spam that to get things level can be a real pain. For me, Monster Hunter Rise is exactly what I wanted to see in a Monster Hunter game on the Nintendo Switch. Gameplay isn't perfect. It never has been, but it's the slickest and most refined version of the game, even rivaling Monster Hunter World. I had heard the complaints about it being slightly easy, and again I'll say, with a good group online fighting the right monster, there's more than enough challenge to be had. Gameplay for me scores 19 out of 20, and the controls with the various tweakable options, but the few niggly moments I've spoken about, score 17 out of 20. Let's look then at visuals, performance and audio. And there's no doubt in my mind that Monster Hunter Rise is one of the most visually impressive games on the Nintendo Switch. When we cut straight to performance then, the game's running at 30 FPS at almost all times. This goes for both docked and handheld, and if you were wondering if the RE engine had any headroom, you only need to look over at handheld mode, as not only does it seem to be running almost flawlessly, but they allow for the capture of video, and that's one of the first things to go when a developer is struggling to maintain performance. Capcom have made clever use of the engine, particularly when you're moving around the village area. This is a smaller space and as such has allowed them to cram in far more detail. There are particle effects in the air, petals fall into the ground, light shafts, and the detail on characters really is quite impressive. According to the guys over at Nintendo Life, the game demo was running at 1344 by 756, but it renders the UI at a higher resolution, that being native at 1080p, and I'd say that's potentially what we've got here. It still looks very crisp, with even the chance that that village area is running at native or perhaps 900p, and when in portable mode there's a clear drop, but again the UI is rendered at native, keeping everything looking crisp in terms of names, etc. But when in game that drops down, I believe, to 540p. The frame rate's maintained, and at that small size it still looks damn tasty. While we're not allowed to show you all of the new monster designs, what we can show looks incredible. The game makes really good use of HD rumble. There's a touch of screen shake, but not too much as to make you feel nauseous, and the first time a Raytheon swoops down and slams to the ground, shaking the whole screen, really will put a smile on your face. Sensible options like allowing you to completely redesign your character at any point from one of the boxes, and the multitude of different visual tweaks that you can do to your character through armors will keep you busy for a long time. The environments are quite strong. There is an argument perhaps that some of the color palettes used are a touch muted, and I think that's more of a personal preference, but there were moments for my personal taste when a little bit more vibrancy wouldn't have gone amiss. As for sound and audio, the music is as lovely as ever. It's great to have a voice acted cast, but that actually makes up quite a small part of the in-game dialogue. When in combat, each of the different players will be calling out shouts, notifying when a monster's going to do a particularly devastating attack, and the constant back and forth between them makes the action feel even more frenetic. I give visuals and performance 19 out of 20, and the sound and audio gets 18 out of 20. Monster Hunter Rise is going to set you back £49.99 for the base pack, or there's other versions that include t-shirts, digital deluxe versions, and I believe there's a console version that Glen might be picking up. I'm not jealous at all. Still, it's a premium priced game, and it absolutely deserves that price tag. You don't have to be a fan of the series to see the amount of work that Capcom have put in here. The porting of the Resi engine, just how good it looks, the performance across the board is stellar, the online infrastructure is absolutely smoothed out, and the numerous little details that have been put into the game smack of a company that knows it's onto a winner. I give value 19 out of 20. Monster Hunter Rise feels like a game for fans and new players alike. Nothing in this world is perfect, but Rise is my favourite in the series so far, and having that in the palm of my hand is delightful. It scores a SwitchUp score of 92%. Are you playing this one tomorrow? Will you be joining me for some online games? And please do join our Discord, because we've got a room set up specifically for this game, and yeah, what an absolute belter this one is. Thanks to our patrons who support us each and every month. And as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!